Welcome to the Grief and Belief podcast, where we share stories of hope. Thank you for joining us. We hope this powerful story will help you feel God's love for you today.
Welcome to another episode of the Grief and Belief podcast. I'm David Mickelson.
And I'm Kori Andrews.
And today we're really excited to have a new guest on, a guest that I've just gotten to know in the last few months. His name is Stu Davis. Stu will be sharing his experience with the loss of his son, Grant, 19 years ago. And I met Stu through our church callings. Stu is a counselor in the Spanish Fork, Utah Mission Presidency, and we've attended meetings together. And in one of those meetings, I got to introduce myself. I mentioned that Ava had passed away. And actually, in a kind of a relatively small group, a couple of people came up to me afterwards and said, I lost a daughter, I lost a son, and Stu was one of them. And so we connected over that. And I said, hey, how would you be interested in joining me and a friend on a podcast? And he said, hey, I'm up for anything. And so that's how this episode was born a month or two ago. And we're grateful, Stu, to have you on the podcast.
I'm excited to be here.
So I guess, Stu, since we're still getting to know you, maybe we could just ask you to introduce yourself and share a little bit about who you are and what you love to do in your life and anything you'd like to do.
Great. Thank you. So I think to introduce myself, I need to point out that I'm a convert to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I joined the church when I was 19 years old. And I had a kind of a troubled childhood. My family was broken up. So the church brought a lot of resolution and continuity to my life. I served a mission for the church in Ecuador 41 years ago. Attended BYU, where I met my wife, and we were married in the Mesa, Arizona temple. After that, I graduated in accounting from BYU, and then went to graduate school at Cornell, where I received a Master of Health Administration and worked in hospital administration for about 4 years, and decided that was a little too boring for me. I needed a little more excitement in my life. So I went to medical school. We started medical school with 5 children. Grant was our oldest child. And then I completed a residency in orthopedic surgery. And then we moved to Montana, and I practiced in Montana. And after my wife decided she didn't really like the cold weather, we moved to Flagstaff, Arizona, where I completed my practice about a year ago is when I retired. And what I like to do is anything outdoors. I've spent over 150 days in the Grand Canyon. I've climbed Mount Rainier. I've climbed some mountains in South America and Central America. I just like to be out and doing. I typically, if I can, ski between 30 and 40 days a year. Lately, it's been slowing down. I'm 60 now, so that doesn't feel as fresh as it used to be, as it used to. So that's kind of me. We've been married for 37 years and just have wonderful 5 kids and are busy chasing them around and trying to keep up with our kids. So we have our youngest is at BYU. Our oldest lives in Reno, and we have 3 in between.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it does sound like you're up for anything too. So we're not climbing a mountain today, but we do recognize that kind of taking your mind back to grief can be a challenge and can be something that causes you to dig deep. And so just thanks for being up for anything and for being a part of our podcast today. We're excited to get to know you better as you introduce us to your son, Grant. So maybe that would be a good transition into telling us a little bit more about him.
Sure. So Grant was born when we were at BYU and just was precocious, to say the least. When he was a year and a half old, you could have a conversation with him with full sentences. I remember when he was young, I was doing something on the car, and he was literally about 16 months old, and he asked me where the spark plug was, which we kind of took for granted because we didn't know any different. We came to realize that was definitely precocious. He loved anything humorous. I mean, just from day one, loved humor. And he was involved in every single sport you could imagine from day one. And that really wasn't me pushing him. He just wanted to be in soccer. He wanted to be in football. He wanted to be in baseball. He wanted to be in basketball. He just loved exploring what his body could do, and made a lot of friends very easily, was super outgoing. He had injured his knee when he was in high school and couldn't really participate in running sports anymore, just kind of the nature of the injury that he had to his knee. So at that time, so we're going to jump forward a little bit to when he was 12, we were working in Boy Scouts. I was a scoutmaster, and we were working on merit badges, and somebody said, hey, let's do a bicycling merit badge. So we went out and said, all right, we're going to do a bicycling merit badge. And this was about the time that Lance Armstrong was pre-controversy. Bicycling was a really big deal in the United States. And we lived in Tucson at the time. And in Tucson, bicycling is an even bigger thing because you can bicycle 12 months a year down there. So it was really this gigantic thing. So all the boys were very excited. We had 27 scouts in that ward. So it was a big scouting troop. And Grant could bicycle. Bicycling doesn't injure the knee the way running does. So we went out and were bicycling, and I was an avid cyclist myself. And we're out on just a basic ride, and I'm thinking, oh, I need to slow down. I'm probably, Grant's going to be half a mile behind me. And I slowed down, and he went past me, and he's like, why are you slowing down, Dad? And he was literally right behind me. And I thought, wow, this is a 12-year-old kid. I was kind of shocked. He really loved just exploring his body. He loved humor probably excessively. I mean, he and his friends did some stuff that were a little bit on the crazy side just to see how fun it was. Jumping off the roof onto the trampoline into the pool, kind of typical not thinking clearly teenage boys.
The brain hadn't fully developed yet. Decisions.
Exactly. Brain had not developed. He took the car out joyriding a couple of times without telling us, standard 14, 15-year-old kid stuff to do. Never had a problem. Half of his friends were not members of the church, and he just invited everybody to come and join the church. And it was active in seminary, was active in young men's and young women's. He was young men's teachers president. Just, a fun-loving, happy kid, really free of some of the turmoil that comes with the teenage years. He seemed to be somewhat immune to it. He played the piano because he loved his mom, but he really didn't want to play the piano, kind of thing. He did what he was supposed to do, even if he didn't want to, because he knew it would make the people around him happy. So that's kind of that's who Grant was. Just kind of an all-American great kid.
I feel like in a lot of ways I was like Grant, except I wasn't that good at as many things as he was. But I liked, I like jumping off things and lighting things on fire a little bit, and getting in, making my parents just feel a little bit uncomfortable on it from time to time. So, well, it sounds like just what a wonderful kid, and driven, and just successful in so much of what he did. And from kind of what you shared with me, it was, his success in cycling that led to some of the challenges that he faced. And so wondering if you could maybe help us understand the circumstances around his passing.
Yeah. So this cycling thing kind of exploded. It really became bigger than we ever expected it to become. He took it upon himself to just bicycle. And we would, I think when he passed away, we had something like 100 tires and tubes that he'd worn out in the garage. He'd worn out 3 bicycles, like completely wore them out. And at one point, it seemed excessive. He was riding about 400 miles a week and just training all the time. And his performance in the bike races that he was doing had kind of been slowly deteriorating. And so we got him a coach in Phoenix. And the first thing the coach did was just shut him down and said, "You're not going to bicycle for 2 weeks." And really redesigned his training schedules so that he wasn't doing 400 miles a week. You know, it's common to think more is better, and better is better. More is not necessarily better.
Mm-hmm.
So Grant started riding a lot, and he was winning races that he was competing in against adults. And he was ranked nationally on the road cycling. This is all road cycling. None of this is mountain biking. And he had been invited to one of 6 training camps nationally. They had him in California and Pennsylvania, and his particular one was in Flagstaff, Arizona. And they invited 20 kids from all around the country that seemed to have potential. And Grant went to this camp, and in the camp, they had 22 miniature races, you know, 1 kilometer, 5 kilometers, 10-kilometer races that they would do throughout this week-long camp at Northern Arizona University. And Grant won 21 of the 22.
Oh,
so
my
he was
gosh.
in, I mean, he was my kid. So it sounds like I'm bragging, but the reality is he was just next level gifted, way
Wow.
beyond anything that I have credit for. So he was invited to the U.S. Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs to train with the under 21 bicycling development team. And again, this was Lance Armstrong years. So really good athletes that may not have pursued cycling were involved in this. And that happened about a month before Grant's accident. So that's kind of the run up to this. It was just a given that Grant on any given day was going to go out for 3.5 hours and ride his bike and do an 80-mile bike ride alone. And this started really when he was 15, and he had his accident when he was 16. So just about 6 weeks shy of turning 17 was when he had his accident. So that was kind of the run up to this. It was this kind of passion about, you know, being an athlete that really he took to the next level. And he was showing potential, and his coach was telling us that he thought he might be able to race in Europe and you know, participate in that. That's the caliber that he was at. So
like a Tour de France type of a
Tour de France kind of rider.
Yeah.
I mean, he was in that category. And the captain of the team that we belonged to, his name's Joel Thompson, was the world duathlete champion back in his day. And Joel came to me and he said, "I've never seen any kid like this." So he was really a gifted athlete. He just was kind of somebody that you looked at and said, "You're not like the rest of us." So anyway, that's where he was.
Did he have any of like pressure on him? Did he put that on himself of like, I got to perform, I got to do well? Did you notice that, you know, a lot of pressure?
You know, that's an interesting question. Several friends afterwards came to me and they thought, "Well, he's a surgeon. You must be pressuring Grant to do this." I never once told him, you know, "You have to do this." It was like, how do I facilitate this? I view the role of a parent as a facilitator. So Grant put pressure on himself, but it never was negative. It was, okay, that didn't turn out well. What can I do to improve it? But he never was like self-abusive at all. It was always, how can I improve myself? You know, writing goals and putting them on the ceiling above his bed. This is what I want to do to accomplish. So it was just self-driven, just self-motivated.
That's incredible. That's amazing. Well, thank you. Yeah, thanks for telling us a little bit more and helping us understand, you know, where he was at that time. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the accident and what
Sure.
occurred there?
So this is going to bleed into the last part of the podcast. So we're going to grab some of this and introduce it now a little bit, and then it'll bleed forward. So Grant, like I said, was very dedicated to the church. And I might get teary here, but that's probably normal.
Yes.
That's okay. We welcome
uh,
that.
the Saturday before his accident was on a Wednesday, and the Saturday before his accident, the youth had scheduled a temple trip from Tucson to go up to Mesa. There was no temple in Tucson at that time, so they had to drive up, and it was 100 miles, so about an hour and a half drive up. And they were planning on leaving at 6 a.m. to get to the temple. And Grant was scheduled for a 3.5 hour bike ride that Saturday. Well, it's late June. His accident was June 28th. And you don't bicycle at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in Tucson in late June. When it's 114, it's just not safe.
Yeah.
So you really have to get out early. Well, Grant didn't want to miss the temple, and he didn't want to miss his training ride. So he just woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning and rode before the temple. Well, he got back about 5:30, showered, jumped in the car, and went to the temple so that he'd make sure that he got to the temple. And he really, really was motivated to please the Lord and to maximize his own capacity. And it was just a wonderful example to our family that we still harken back to. I mean, we talk about it all the time, that you can work hard and achieve your goals, but you have to include the Lord along the way. And Grant was just a prime example of that. So the accident occurred on a Wednesday. And a little bit of context there. I finished my residency on Tuesday. So I finished all my training. So Tuesday night was this great party at the Davis house. Dad's done. We get to move on. Dad gets to make money instead of just, working all the time. It was this really great relief on all of us that it's done. We've been working for 10 years to do this, and it's over.
Celebration.
And I slept in the next morning, which was rare. I mean, I never slept in. And I remember hearing Grant at the front door, his, bicycle cleats clicking on the floor saying, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll be back in 3.5 hours. It's not going to be too hot. I'll be safe." And then he left. And that's the last we ever heard of him. So he went out and was about 15 miles from home, riding on a stretch of road that he'd ridden 50 times before. I mean, and it was wide open road. And a guy who was in a landscape truck had pulled over to answer his phone and had just parked along the side of the road legally. I mean, he was off the side of the road, kind of in where a bike would be, but off the side of the road, and had just parked to answer this phone call. And Grant was pedaling along and just had his head down, probably, thinking I'm Lance Armstrong in the Tour de France, and was just cycling along and ran into the back of his parked trailer and broke his neck, severed his spine, and was transferred by helicopter to University Medical Center in Tucson. And so my wife and I got called by my brother-in-law and said, "What's going on? I just got a call from a state trooper from Carmel's phone." Well, Grant didn't have his own cell phone, so he was using Carmel's cell phone. So I called her cell phone, and a state trooper picked it up and said, "Oh, we've life flighted your son to University Medical Center." Well, we jump in the car. I know my way down to UMC. We jump in the car, drive down there, and I go into the trauma bay, and I know everybody. I know every single person in the room by name. And long faces, sad. They immediately took him to surgery and then to the ICU. And the next morning we went in after surgery and after everything had calmed down. And I looked at all of the medications and everything. And, I know what's going on. And I said to the nurse, I said, "When he doesn't have any sedation being administered right now." When was the last time he got any sedation? It was like 9 hours before. And I thought, okay, this is over. I mean, if he hasn't had sedation for 9 hours and he's still unconscious, this is far worse than just he's going to be a quadriplegic.
Did you know the extent of his injuries at that point?
No, I didn't find that out for a long time. You have selective appreciation for what's going on around you in those moments. People may have told me, I didn't hear it. I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't prepared to hear it. You just don't know. You have this much capacity, and it gets reached very quickly. And everything people say beyond that, they're well-meaning. I didn't hear anything.
Yep.
Well, it turns out that when the paramedics showed up to help Grant, they had to intubate him on the scene because he wasn't breathing. Well, they esophageally intubated him, which means they put the breathing tube not in his trachea, but in his esophagus. So they were filling his stomach with air for a half an hour before they realized it was in the wrong place and repositioned it into his lungs. Well, that's probably what ultimately led to Grant's demise, was the injury to his brain by not having oxygen for a half an hour. And I harbor no ill will for those paramedics at all. They did the best they could in terrible circumstances on the side of a road. And in hindsight, it was a blessing. Grant would have hated to be a quadriplegic, which he would have been, kind of like Christopher Reeve, who played Superman years ago, of those who remember. And that would have not been good. And having him pass away was okay. So I told my wife I thought that it was over in the ICU, and that it would be a good idea for us to contact organ donation services. And she said, well, I don't know if I can do that. I haven't got there yet. And I said, fine. So I said, if you say no, that's fine. But just think about it. And about 24 hours later, she came back and she said, okay, I'm ready. Let's do this. So Grant was able to be an organ donor and help 3 other people. They took his liver and his kidneys, but they couldn't take his heart or lungs because of the lack of oxygen that they'd sustained. So he was able to help 3 people's lives be prolonged. And that was awesome. So good for him. And then we buried him on July 3rd. His accident was June 28th, and we buried him on he died on July 3rd, and then we buried him on July 8th. So those are the circumstances surrounding his passing. It's interesting. On the Sunday after they went to the temple, Grant received his patriarchal blessing. And while we were in while he was in the ICU, the patriarch brought us the patriarchal blessing and said, hey, I want to talk to you about this. And Grant never read it. He passed away before he got it transcribed and written. And the patriarch pointed out that these blessings are eternal. It says here he'll be married in the temple. He'll be married for time and all eternity. And it says he'll be a missionary. And those blessings are eternal and will last forever. And that really was reassuring, especially for my wife and for us, to know that this is not the end. This is just a transition from mortality into immortality that we're all going to go through. And
Okay.
so, sorry.
I'm wondering if we can dig in on the patriarchal blessing side just a little bit more,
Sure.
because I think this is something we have not talked about in our podcast episodes. And I'm wondering if there were what my experience has been, I guess, is so much of Ava's patriarchal blessing, which she got a couple of years before she passed away. So much of it, I can very clearly see eternal perspective. All of these things can come true.
Yeah.
There's one part where no matter how I stretch my mind, I have a hard time understanding, and I've just decided that's God will reveal that to me when He wants to, and I'm not gonna put up a fight about it. But when the patriarch shared kind of, I want to talk to you about this, were there any, not that we need to go into the specifics of it, but were there still some parts where you thought, well, I wonder how that's going to work out. That one doesn't quite make sense. Or was there any of that feeling, even knowing that a patriarchal blessing spans over eternity?
So I think for me, the idea that he would meet someone in heaven resonated, and that made a lot of sense. But he mentioned Grant's language skills on his mission. That he likely would learn a foreign language, and it would likely be easy for him to learn that language, which made perfect sense to us when we heard it. I mean, he was a bright kid. But how that's going to be possible or necessary in the eternities, I don't know. I presume that language is singular in heaven. I don't know. Perhaps there are multiple dialects that somehow we just understand. I don't know. But how that's going to affect his capacity long term, I don't understand why that would be a relevant thing in the eternities, to be able to learn the language quickly. But perhaps there are languages beyond speech that are being addressed. And there's some people are very attuned to other people's moods, and they can really contact with those people in that mood and adapt themselves quickly and easily to an individual's mood to give them comfort. Well, that's language. It's just not speech. So I think that it's probably talking about something along those lines that are a little beyond my capacity as a mortal to
Yeah.
understand.
Yep.
That's my guess.
I'm guessing that's a common experience. I think one of the first things a person does when a loved one passes away, especially a child, if they had a patriarchal blessing, is go to that and say, okay, was this in there? Were there any clues in there? Or what what's what gives me hope? Or what's confusing about it? Or like, I think that's a pretty natural thing to do. And so I'm grateful we got a chance to just visit about that. And I love that perspective. And I think that's probably what happens is over time, things that seem confusing start to make a little more sense, even if we're like, I don't know that this is the actual answer, but at least I can see how it could be true.
Yeah.
Since we're on this topic, I'm kind of curious too. That, when our daughter passed away, my wife had some things in her patriarchal blessing that didn't really make sense to her. But then when everything happened with Cameron, it did kind of help some things there. Was there anything in your or your wife's patriarchal blessing that maybe prepared you or helped you be ready for this experience with Grant's passing that you can think of?
So my wife's name is Carmel, and in Carmel's patriarchal blessing, it specifically says that she needs to be aware of becoming being depressed or becoming overly affected and negative. And if you've met my wife, that's just in and of itself a disconnect. I don't think she's ever had a down day in her entire life. She's just this ebullient, incredibly positive person. And for her, that resonated because she was like, here's the great trial of whether or not I'm going to be able to do that. And she viewed
Mm.
Grant's passing as exactly a trial to address that issue, and how she dealt with that one issue would be fulfillment of her ability to carry out that part of her patriarchal blessing. And she shined. She did fabulous. She's done fabulous. She's never had anything but faith and hope that he's going to live forever. So she viewed it as the ability to draw on the Savior to overcome what was predicted might be an Achilles heel for her, and it wasn't.
Well, that absolutely makes sense. And I just think patriarchal blessing is such a wonderful blessing to have in our lives and such a source of hope. And so thank you for letting us ask some questions around that.
Sure.
Um, talk to us a little bit about. I'm thinking of President Nelson when his first wife passed away, and he talked about the pain and agony of being there with her. And I'm thinking him as a surgeon and somebody who saved many lives and not being able to save hers. Did your medical experience and training impact anything related to how you responded or how you felt about Grant's passing over that first few days, weeks, months?
Wow, I wish I could say yes, but I think I understood very quickly what the scenario was. Like I mentioned, it was obvious to me almost immediately that this was done. This is what we've seen of Grant. We've seen, and it's going to be over. And I didn't feel any sense of hopelessness that I couldn't save him. It was just the nature of being alive, that accidents happen. And one of the things that has come up in my I have it right here. Let me see if I'm going to read this to you. This is a quote from a woman named Jasmine Paris, who was the first woman finisher of the Barkley Marathons. And that's a whole different thing. I encourage all your viewers and you both to look up the Barkley Marathons if you haven't. And she says, I think modern society is built on this idea that safety is civilization, and what we've built up around ourselves to separate us from the world. So I think what we do in large part is we create a veneer to separate ourselves from the world. And when someone passes away, all of that is stripped off, and we're stuck dealing with reality. And in medicine, I've seen so many people pass away. And in society at large, we don't see that anymore. People don't die at home. We don't see grandpa die. Maybe a few close relatives will be in the ICU in a very controlled environment and see someone pass away. And we're so far removed from those events. I think some people dealing with the grief of a loved one dying, it's brand new to them. And that is just this guttural realization of what maybe 300 years ago or 200 years ago or 100 years ago, we were a little bit more closely living. We were living closer to reality, and we've created a world where we're separated from that. So my training in medicine kept me very close to people passing away. So I think I was just very okay with seeing Grant pass away, but the separation was something I didn't expect. Him no longer being able to come home and have a conversation with me, that was something I had no idea how to deal with. Medicine didn't prepare me for that. So that was probably my greatest grief point, was not being able to sit down and have a conversation with him every evening. I don't think I answered the question. Sorry.
No, you did, in the sense that I think it sounds like your medical expertise prepared you for it, as opposed to maybe being something where it's like, I should know how to save him. It actually prepared you a little bit to deal with that side of it, but didn't prepare you for the emotional family connect, the separation, like you're saying,
right,
with your son. So I think you did just fine.
Along with that idea of that separation, was there anything else that weighed on you in the weeks and months after, or was it mainly that missing of him in his presence?
So it's multifactorial when you're a dad and a husband, and you have a child pass away. It's not just me. Certainly there is just me that needs to be taken care of, but I was worried about my wife. How's she doing? So that distracted me a little bit, and I kind of was worried, making sure she was okay. How are my children dealing with this? What's going on? And both of you may have experienced this when your loved one was ill. and people came to visit you at the hospital, at one point I realized I'm not getting as much comfort from the people showing up here as I am reassuring them that we're going to be okay. And that was something I didn't expect. It's like they're coming to the hospital. Really, what they're looking for is reassurance that the Davises are going to be okay. And I was the spokesman for the family to say, yeah, we're going to be okay. So I had to really quickly get past my own challenges and assure all the other people coming to the hospital and my in-laws and my family who are not LDS and all these people that this is all going to be okay, which I found to be not onerous. It wasn't painful. It's just something I didn't expect. I mean, I didn't realize I was going to be the one offering all the comfort to everybody else around me. That's not what I expected.
I remember the day after Ava passed away was Halloween, and during the Halloween festivities, now I'm trying to get all of my memories correctly, but after the Halloween festivities, they had a candlelight vigil around our house in our cul-de-sac, and people came. They had lined the street with paper bags and tea lights, and Kori, you remember this, and I remember the strongest feeling that I needed to go throughout everybody in that crowd and give every single person a hug. And I'm sure I missed some. But I think that resonates with me what you're saying, because I wanted people to know we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, what okay means is different and for everybody. But I just wanted to portray some sense of God is good to us and he's going to help us through it. And yeah, this is not what we planned for or expected, but God knows how to help us and guide us through it. And so I can go out and tell you thank you and love you and hug you. And after some people left, the youth got together, we stood in a circle, we sang songs together, and then I shared kind of a testimony when it was time for us to get it. We were exhausted and it was time to go back into the house, and that night could have lasted forever. We bore testimony, and then we snuck away. But I just remember that feeling of I want people to know we're going to be okay.
Right. And did you feel that was, I mean, in a way, a spiritual gift that you were in a position to be able to do that? Because I think some people aren't in that position.
Yeah, I would say I felt strength beyond myself to be able to do it. I mean, it was
Yeah.
basically one day after Ava had passed away, after a 3-day battle with leukemia. We were in no position to be, doing other things. Um, but yes, that felt like God's power, you know, blessing me and helping me, sustaining me to do something for other people.
Right. So to me, that's DNC 46 on steroids. I don't know where that came from. Nothing I could individually do, nothing I could have done beforehand or after would have made it possible for me to do that. That was just God reaching out and saying, here, I'm going to give you this, and you can turn around and brighten the lives of the people that are coming and let them know I'm real, and you'll be a testimony to them of my divinity. And I just feel privileged that I was granted that opportunity. Really, that's kind of how I see it. Like, that's what he wanted me to do in that moment, and I was there to do it.
I love these thoughts. I'm also thinking of those who maybe don't feel that, when that happens, they don't kind of, and I don't know, I think I can kind of relate a little bit because when our daughter passed away, she'd been in the hospital for a long time and we had a lot of people praying. And I know at least initially, I just felt this weight of like, what do I say? Like, did their prayers matter? And it didn't come immediately that I knew what to say or how to help or or how to comfort those who were praying for us, even though that shouldn't have been my responsibility. I just felt like it was, that it was my responsibility because I told her story that I needed to be able to comfort them too. And so I can relate to those who are like, I don't know, how to, I'm hurting and I don't have all the answers. So how am I going to give them, the comfort that I know that they want to? That can be a hard balance, and eventually for me it did come, and I think I was able to help and share with some things, but I think also that can be a heavy weight. That can be a heavy weight to burden at times, and we almost have to, it requires us to turn to the Savior and seek His help.
Can I say one more thing about this?
Mm-hmm.
That was my experience. That doesn't mean that I'm fancy or special, or somebody who doesn't have that is defective. And I
Yeah.
think people mired in grief or dealing with grief or moving through grief feel like if they're not something, they might question their faith. They might feel defective. They might not feel like they're good enough. This is my experience, period. And their experience is their experience. And it's neither good nor bad. It's just theirs. And the absolute constant here is that God will help you through it. However, you need to be helped through it. This is how I was helped through it. But that doesn't mean you should expect yourself to look like me. It's just not going to happen that way. It's very individual.
Yeah, it's the uniqueness of the plan and of our
Yeah.
mortal experience.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, Stu, you mentioned it's been 19 years since Grant has passed away. You've had a variety of experiences over that time. What has been helpful to you over the 19 years?
Before I joined the church, I had this unbelievable belief in eternity. I just knew this life was not all there ever was. And then when I joined the church, and as I've grown in the church, it's just put words to what the Spirit had already borne testimony to me of. I can say that over the last 19 years, I've come to more completely realize that I will see Grant again, that this life is just one step in mortality, in eternity, and that because of the atonement of Jesus Christ, life is eternal. And that is the underlying constant in all of this. That is, I've doubted everything. I've doubted anything and everything over the last 19 years. It's just been a roller coaster. But I can honestly say it's never been a question of whether I'm going to be able to see Grant again, and that the atonement has made it possible for us to live together for eternity. That has never been doubted. Everything else has been, but that hasn't been doubted. And because I've been blessed with that and had something really the iron rod of my testimony has been that, I've hung on. And all of those doubts that I had over the last 19 years have bit by bit by bit been answered, and they've all gone away. And now all of those doubts are faith. And I just didn't give up. I just kept hanging on. And I'm grateful for understanding that the plan of salvation makes it eternal for us. That's I think that answers your question.
Yeah, for sure. I love that, your testimony of that, and how we do. I love that, and that idea of it being the iron rod that we kind of cling to, when life gets tough, and when the mists of darkness come, there's something there to hold on to. And that truth is just beautiful. Are there any other truths or resources that have been helpful, or through your grief journey?
So it's interesting. I read a book called by Paulo Coelho, called The Alchemist, El Alquimista. And he's a Brazilian author. And tells the journey of a young man who goes in search of himself, of what's the meaning of life, and he makes this tour through northern Africa over to the pyramids, and ultimately returns home to his home in Spain. And the whole time, what he was looking for, he finds right in front of him. And it's an interesting, it's a allegorical story written by a non-LDS author, but it resonates. And I think he's sold something like 100 million copies of this book worldwide. It's well read throughout. And it just tells this journey that frequently the answers to what we're looking for are right in front of us. It's the people around us. It's the scriptures. It's participating in our ward or our congregation, or working at Salvation Army just down the street. You don't need to go somewhere exotic to find answers. The answers are right there waiting for you to just reach out and grab a hold of them. And you've already got all the answers waiting for you. You don't need to go somewhere or come up with some new way to create an answer. It's waiting for you. Just look, it's right there waiting for you. So that was helpful for me, that book, The Alchemist.
That's awesome. We'll be sure to link to that in the episode notes so people can grab that if they want to. And Stu, thank you so much for sharing such a deeply personal experience and a deeply personal testimony, and how you've learned and grown over time, and how your bits of doubt or your questions have turned into the strong faith that you have in this grand plan that's hard to understand. As we often quote one of our previous guests, Lizzie Andrews, this plan is absolutely real and absolutely true. And there's, I always think there's the plan of salvation that we put on the felt board, right? And that's the same for all of us. And then there's a personal plan of redemption for each one of us. And you have just done such a beautiful job of sharing what that's looked like in your life. Maybe as we, Kori, anything else you'd want to add to that?
I was just going to say how much I've loved our little tangent there on patriarchal blessings too, and how that fits into God's plan and how He works with us and prepares us, and then also maybe leaves some things in there that we're excited to figure out later, And so, anyways, I just love how that kind of correlates with what you were just saying about the plan, God's plan for all of us. So.
Yeah, I'll be grabbing my patriarchal blessing once we're done with this interview to go see what else I can find in there.
Yeah.
Well, Stu, as we navigate to the end of the episode, we'd love to ask you the same question that we ask all of our guests. Considering your experience with grief, what do you now believe about Jesus Christ?
I believe, actually, it's not really belief anymore. It used to be belief, but now I know. It feels more like I know that Jesus Christ knows me, He loves me, and that I'm good enough to deserve the atonement. And I think sometimes I doubted whether or not I was worthy enough to deserve the atonement. And I now believe, because the Spirit has made it known unto me, that I am deserving of the atonement as much as anyone is. And I love that I can feel that now. I know that He loves Grant. I know that He loves my wife and my kids, and He loves Kori Andrews, and He loves David Mickelson. And I have no doubt now, it's a knowledge that I am worthy to receive the atonement in my life. And if I let it, it will improve my life as I daily repent. That's what I believe about Jesus Christ now.
Well, that is absolutely perfect and beautifully said. Yep. Well, thank you for being with us, Stu, and all that you've been able to share, and look forward to others listening to this episode. As always, for those who are listening, if there's somebody you feel like would benefit from hearing this message about the plan of salvation, about God's preparation in our lives, and how we can survive through traumatic, challenging experiences, please just copy that link and share it with a friend. And that's how this podcast can do more good, is just by everybody sharing it with somebody who's in need. So, but thank you again, Stu. Really
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
Yep,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Bye.
Thank you to our incredible guests for sharing their story of hope. If you know someone who might be blessed by hearing this message, please share it with them. We would love it if you would subscribe, rate, and review, and comment on our podcast so others can find it. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook, as well as join our Grief and Beliefs Facebook group. Thank you to our sponsor, High Five Live Tours, where fun and joy meet on inspiring travel experiences. Special thanks to our producer, Misty Lynn Howard. Check out her history podcast called Faith Ignited. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time.